5 and 7 ring traps, but the magnitude is quite small. It's about 0.1 centimeters on average. So our conclusion for this section has to be that our 5 and 7 ring devices, they do catch fewer prawns, and the prawns are smaller. So we haven't totally achieved our objective with these ones. But who cares? What about this prawn body size thing? Well, this is an interesting example of a nonlinear process that goes on when you're dealing with these fisheries-related issues. When you're catching prawns, a lot of people will sort them. A lot of people send the prawns off in these freezer boxes for sale to Japan. And each of these boxes actually apply to a different size of prawn. They go extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and that sort of thing. And the packing plant will pay you the least amount for whatever the peak of your distribution of size is. So whatever the most common size of prawn is, they pay you the least for that. So the ones that are bigger and the ones that are smaller, you'll make more. So in terms of the economics of this, you have to understand what it's doing to the body sizes that you're catching to understand what would happen to the profitability of the fishery. Thirdly, are these devices practical? Well, this is more for the fishermen to say than for me, but for the ones that we showed it to and talked to, they seem pretty interested in it. These gears right now are stacked, so this is how it would be on the boat. You've got all the different devices in the traps. They're still stacking just fine, so they're not interfering that way. They're pretty easy to clear. So I would conclude that they were suitable for use in field conditions, also because they were very durable. So let's recap this section. How did the BRDs affect bycatch? Well, they reduced / eliminated it, and what we did catch was a species of much less conservation concern. It did, however, reduce target catch as well, so we probably need to improve that. Are the devices practical? I think so, but again, that's something that you'd have to determine collaboratively. Now, what if we were to use these? What would happen? So, remember I said before that the fishery is closed when you hit a certain number of prawns per trap? That means that if you were to reduce the catch per trap, the fishery would probably just go for longer. And every extra time you put in the trap in the water is an extra chance to catch a rockfish or other species as bycatch. So this is something you have to think about. You have to make sure that you're reducing your bycatch enough that extended fishery will end up catching fewer fish overall. And so a back of the envelope calculation reveals two things. First of all, it reveals that the 5 and 7 ring devices, even though the fishery would go for longer, you'd still catch less fish overall, probably. But second of all, if you were to do a simple reduction in ring opening size, which I might add was Department of Fisheries' first plan that they expressed, some of the people there expressed to me, you would actually increase your fish catch rate, or your overall fish caught in the fishery. So this is an example of why you have to do these sorts of studies before you start doing anything in a big scale. There's also another economic factor here. A longer fishing season would support more local sales. So you wouldn't have to freeze as much and sell it to Japan, because you'd be able to sell more of it fresh at a dock. And this is a relatively new thing over the last few years where people in BC actually want to spend the premium amount of money to buy these prawns. I'm just making this point because these are all different factors you'd have to consider when doing the economics of whether these are a viable product. But I still ask the question, is there a way we could improve this? Could we come up with a way to improve our BRDs? And in doing so, we have to understand, why are our BRDs reducing catch in the first place? So to answer this question, we did a little bit of deep water observation. Now, doing any sort of work in deep water, and I classify deep water, by the way, as anything below 40 meters, because you can't scuba dive down there easily, you encounter a lot of problems. First of all, it's deep in deep water, which means there's a lot of pressure involved. So it's expensive to build things to go down there. It's dark, so you don't get a lot of light, meaning that if you introduce light into the system, as they're doing here, you have the potential to drastically affect the behavior of animals that you're trying to study. It's pretty quiet down there too, which means, at least from anthropogenic noise, it's 100 meters you're still getting it, but the deeper you go, the less you experience. But it still means, again, if you have an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, something submersible down there, it's generating quite a bit of noise. And so again, the sound will affect their behavior. And finally, it's simply cost prohibitive. Even a mid-sized ROV is about $3,000 a day to deploy. So it becomes quite prohibitive if you're trying to do it on a grad student budget. So this is what we came up with. This is simply something that we affectionately dubbed TrapCam, and it fits a couple of the criteria we need. So it can go down 100 meters, and all it is simply an apparatus that fits on top of the trap and gives you a top-down view of the gear. It uses scuba lights that I soldered on some little red LEDs. So red is a less visible light underwater and affects things' behavior quite a bit less. It's quiet because it's just stationary. So you get these nice long videos where you're not producing the type of sound that scares animals away or attracts them in other contexts. And again, it's cheap. So as opposed to an ROV where it's $3,000 a day to deploy it, this thing's $3,000 to build for the entire unit. And I did this several years ago, so it'd probably be even cheaper now. let's just watch this video. So this is a 3D model of what the apparatus looks like. And it's going to zoom in. This is the view that you're getting. It's the top-down view. Okay? It's going to zoom in, and this is the type of video we get. And unfortunately, it's a little bit too bright here, but basically what you're getting, this is the trap here. So you've got a top-down view of the trap. And you've got at the top of the screen, you've got an opening, and there's a prawn getting into the trap. So you can see kind of around, in the immediate vicinity of the trap, and you can see things that are approaching, you can see things trying to get into it. And so right now we've got a prawn trying to claw its way in through the 3-inch diameter opening. So notice when it went in there, it took a while, but it didn't seem to get stopped very much. It just kind of continually moved in the one direction on its way into the trap. Contrast it with this image. So this now has a bycatch reduction device on it. It has one of these guys right on the opening up here. And it's going to zoom in on this in a second, but what we've got are a bunch of prawns trying to get into this opening at the top of the trap. So here's where I zoom in. What you can see, maybe not on this projector, but if you look at it on a monitor, the rostrum, which is the pointy bit on the prawn's head, is getting stuck between the openings like this. And you can see the prawn going back and forth trying to get into this trap. It's crawling properly. It's doing the first thing that I was hoping it would do, but it's having trouble with the rostrum. And as a result, there's now this traffic jam where all the prawns are getting stuck together trying to force their way into the trap. And eventually they just give up. So this is quite clearly the problem, is that we need to come up with some way. See, it eventually gets in. Yet we have to come up with some way to guide that rostrum in without losing the ladder-like property. This video is just for fun. So we've got a Dungeness crab on the top of the trap and a Kopak rockfish. And the rockfish now, keeping in mind we're 100 meters underwater right now. There, there's a little attack there. That bothers the crab. So these are kind of fun little opportunistic things that you see when you do this sort of work. You never know what's going to happen when you put a camera 100 meters down and just watch. Okay, I'm going to wrap up now. So bycatch reduction device implementation is very difficult. I think that these devices have a role in conservation, but they're often less effective than hoped, and we show that with the shark section. But for context, these devices that I'm holding right here, we submitted them to the World Wildlife Fund's Smart Gear Prize. And this is a global prize that was designed to spark innovation in the field of bycatch reduction research. There were big, big prizes, and they received 84 entries from 31 countries around the world. These are often big research teams, corporate groups, fishing industries, all types of people, researchers. And the first prize is $30,000, and the second and third prize are $10,000. Okay, so there's a lot of money riding on this. We came fourth. And I bring this up to make a point. This device is imperfect. I admit that. And the data show that. However, in all the world, apparently, we're number 4. So what's going on out there? Like, why is this so difficult? And so I'm going to conclude with some observations from our studies and then 3 guidelines that I think would help this field in the future. So first of all, we found that BRDs alone have so far failed to protect sharks and rays from longline fishing. Second of all, we found that prawn trap BRDs need further work, but the innovation has to start with setting targets. So how many rockfish is it okay to catch in a prawn trap? And how many prawns is it okay to not catch per deployment? Is a 20% reduction okay, a 30%? This is something that we need some data from the fishery. We need DFO to come to the table. We need to get all the groups together and sit down and agree on something in order to determine how we want to move forward with it. And so I wrap up with 3 key recommendations. First of all, before you embark on a project like mine, come together and determine your targets. So figure out how much is okay to catch, how much you're willing to forego in terms of catch, and what the economics are around a lost catch, for example. Second of all, you need to incentivize the sharing of bycatch reduction device technology. Quick story, I was at a fishery meeting once. I think you were there, Stephanie. And then I was standing up there giving a talk, and at the end of the talk, a guy puts his hand up and goes, well, I've fixed it. I've kept rockfish out of prawn traps. I've got a device that works. And I said, okay, can you share it with us? No, I'd rather not. And so I'm standing up there going, well, okay, so I don't know. Do I believe him? Is he just trying to get me to stop researching the fishery? I don't know. This is the type of deception that you have to work with in this area. So we need to come up with a way to make it worthwhile for people to share these gears. Mind you, the other fishers, some of them came up to me after and said, don't listen to that guy, he's a liar. So, what do you do, right? Thirdly, BRD should be tested in field conditions. So it's not enough to just do it in an aquarium because you can get really misleading results. When you go into the field, there's a lot of different stuff happening. You understand how it works when you're putting in the water. You understand what the training requirements are. Everything can change and all sorts of unexpected things can happen. So these things need to be tested in the field. Okay. Now for the part of the talk. This is the only part that I haven't rehearsed. That's the acknowledgements. So I want to start, Isabel, by thanking you and acknowledging your contribution to Vine Development over the past 4.5 years. You've been an incredible mentor, and I've learned a lot about what it means to be a scientist and how to do it effectively. Stephanie, you have always been there finding those opportunities that others might not have seen. So even just in this project coming to existence in the first place, you were there when the fishery wanted to come to somebody to find a way to come up with these sorts of devices. You know, you linked me with a very important thing that happened to me in my PhD, which was the Australia grant that I got. This was a grant to go study in Australia that is at its brand new phases. It wasn't advertised anywhere. And Stephanie, I don't know how she found it. She found it. I applied for it and got it. So she's always been there finding these opportunities and helping me stay grounded throughout this project. John, you've been a great person to have on board. Your knowledge of how science works and how fisheries work and policy and everything has really helped me in tackling especially the higher level aspects of these problems. And I appreciate you always being a sounding board there when I needed to talk about different issues. So thank you for that. I want to thank my examining committee as well. Larry, thank you very much. Selena as well. And Lance for chairing the committee. The defense, I mean. I want to thank some folks at Fisheries and Oceans Canada who aren't here right now, but Dennis Rutherford, Laurie Conway, Mike Kadolakowski, they're from the AFO, Chris isn't. Those people put me in touch with fishers at the beginning. I mean, this project was difficult because when I said 200 fishing boats, those are 200 fishing boats all owned by different people. So if you want to get into the fishery, you have to start building these relationships one by one with all the people who you want to work with. And they were very helpful in that, and they also shared a lot of data, especially in the early stages of the project. Chris Spores from the Prawn Fishers Association, and again, he was very helpful in getting this project up and running and in putting me in touch with the right people. Lots of funders and people who donated in-kind contributions. So I'll start with NSERC. The bulk of the money for this project came to NSERC grants for my scholarship, for my salary, for the research budget to Stephanie and Isabel. So they're incredible contribution. My tax as well, same thing. They helped fund some of the more applied work out in the field. The Paddy Foundation paid for our pressure cases, at least some of them, one of them, so we can do the underwater camera work. Vancouver Island University provided funding, as did Simon Fraser University through some private scholarships. I already mentioned the Australia Endeavour Award. This is, well, it didn't necessarily play a part in the research that I've shown you today. It definitely played a part in my development as a scientist. The Prawn Fishers Association, they provided money that was partnered with MyTax, but they also provided their boats, and they let me come out with them and learn, and they trusted me to come out on their boats as somebody that they didn't know, to say, hey, I want to come on your boat and count your bycatch. That's not something that's easy to do. So I really appreciate their trust in me to enable this project to happen. Ocean Quest donated some of the lights that I ended up using for the underwater camera, and Sewell's Marina provided us with mooring for our boats. These are the little things when you're doing this sort of field work you don't think about. They gave us a place to park, as did Parks Canada in the Southern Gulf Islands. And finally, some money was provided by the Ocean and Marine Fisheries branch that's held within the BC Ministry of Agriculture. All critical contributions. I want to thank members of the Cote Lab, past and present, for always being there and making it a lot of fun. And everybody in the Earth to Ocean Research Group. I mean, the turnout here is incredible, and I just really thank all you guys for all the support and everything that you gave over the years. Some faculty here gave some significant contributions. So John Moore, Andy Cooper, Nick Dalby, Arnie Moores, Wendy Palin, and Solomon were always there as a sounding board to provide really good advice at all different times of the project. They're always available, and I really appreciate that. Now to run through some grad students, and these are colleagues that are, some are current grad students, some are former, but all of them played a very important role in my development. Steph, Emily, Evan, Brendan, Jordy, Joel, Sean, Justin, Jenny, Doug, Matt, Mike, Corey, all you guys, I really appreciate everything that you helped me with over the years and how I was able to contribute back to you. I also want to thank this guy. He's not here right now, but Vin Fogarty. He was always there when it came time to do field work. I could call him up right now and say, Vin, I got some field work, and he would be there. This guy is amazing. So I just really want to say that he did a lot on this project. And I want to thank our working groups as well. So Stats, Beers, the Research Derby, Ideas, all the different kind of offshoot things that we've done in our group have been very important to me as well. I'm almost done. I want to thank my family in the back for providing the love and support that families do, but also for providing interesting services such as providing a place for me to store all my prawn gear. This is still there, so I probably have to deal with that. And then one final person, of course, Karina, who has spanned all the categories that I've mentioned. She started as a field assistant, photo there, became a person who analyzed video, became a co-author on a manuscript, and I'm incredibly proud to say will be becoming my wife at the end of June. So thank you for all your love and support and everything you've done along the years, and I look forward to our life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Trip. So before we begin the round of questions, I'm wondering if suggested that we actually have a 5-minute bio break program.
Good idea.
Oh, good.
All right. You guys come around and see what I'm not out of the woods yet.
Okay, so I'm going to stick around until 6.
6.
So
Okay,
if you want to
sorry.
be in on that.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks.
Hold on. See what
Yes. That's
Not
good.
done yet.
I know.
Okay, so is that your mom's second?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Oh, I would like to use the washroom.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Are you going to stay for questions?
Oh, Jesus, it's huge. I think you might have some people slightly jealous of your setup.